What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Slate here on a Thursday, typically reserved as the sports edition. Maybe we'll get into a little bit of Pro Bowl stuff, look ahead to the Super Bowl, see where the bets stand right now in the DraftKings Sportsbook. We could do a little AT&T Pebble Beach if we want, but I think we're going to be heavy NBA. We got a 6-game slate tonight. No NHL talk, of course. It's on to the All-Star break for those who play on ice. So we stick with the hardwood. I am Adam Kaufman, and I believe, definitely with me, but I believe for the first time here on the slate in general, Nick Friar, who you catch oftentimes weekday mornings on the DraftKings YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter channels on the Sweat. But the slate, my friend, welcome. It's good to have you.
I don't know how this is going to go tonight, Adam. I got to be honest. I'm a little nervous, more so because I'm dealing with you than, as opposed to Jesse or Adam. But not Adam, you're Adam. See, already nervous. Look at that.
So much pressure. Well, I'll tell you how it's going to go. Here's how it's going to go. You're going to have infinitely more fun on this show than you ever have on the Sweat for multiple reasons. But the biggest one is this. It's just free reign, man. Like, you don't have to worry about being tight and concise with your answers and, getting blasted by Bukes or whoever else, or, so I got to hurry up so that like Waylon or Meiselman can weigh in, or Gary and those guys. It's just me and you. It's just me and you, and we can riff as much as we want.
All right, good. You already won me over. I thought you were going to use the reason as tonight's NBA slate, because we say that's not a good reason at all, because all the injuries that we're dealing with are, it's a little bit much.
We've definitely got some question marks going into the 7 o'clock lock, of course, for those playing DFS, and we'll get to the sports betting side of things in a little bit. Some of the key injuries that, we'll see if these guys play or if they don't, but things that we're keeping an eye on right now, that is LeBron James is doubtful to play while Anthony Davis is probable for the Lakers. And of course, we know Russell Westbrook is going to be out there. Zach LaVine questionable, as is TRAE Young right now for Atlanta. Jimmy Butler, he is planning to play, though he is on the injury report at the moment. Cade Cunningham, questionable. D'Angelo Russell, questionable. Kyle Lowry is questionable. We don't spend a lot of time talking about him. Some bigger news midday is DeJounte Murray, Jakob Poeltl. Those guys have both been ruled out for the Spurs. So there's going to be a lot of talk about San Antonio in terms of value opportunities for the people of just these, these bigger ones, again, that we're still waiting for a little bit of clarity on in the next couple hours. Which is the most impactful one for you when it comes to building a lineup?
Yeah, right now, well, we already know what's going on with the Spurs and LeBron. I mean, he's doubtful, right? So he's as good as not playing. I think that you have some real value options over in that Lakers game after what happened against the Blazers last time out. Russell Westbrook is a guy who obviously plays better when LeBron's not there, which I feel like is another issue in and of itself. But when it comes to fantasy, I still, hesitate. Is he going to give us that value that we're looking for? The guy who I'm really interested tonight in that Lakers-Clippers game on the Lakers side of it is Carmelo Anthony. He's only coming in at 5K, I believe tonight, 5K. Obviously popped off last game. So trying to ride that wave a little bit, of course, that doesn't always work out, but we're trying to get a value play right now. Going up against a team that, the Clippers, I know they're the favorite tonight, but I don't necessarily like them in that setting. And this is a home game for the Lakers too, as much as, we look at the home road splits. Yeah, ish. Yeah. So it's still a home game for them. So being back in your own building, I think that's going to make a difference in what he did last time out. So Melo's a guy I like a lot tonight too. And then obviously you brought up the Spurs hurdle. I mean, I know that everybody's going to be on Eubanks tonight. I don't necessarily love him in this one though. I understand the opportunities are going to be there. So getting some exposure to him for sure. But in general, like I look at this like he's going up against Bam tonight, right? And I mean, I'm sorry, like Bam's a pretty good defensive player. So I don't necessarily want to go and throw a scrub out against him. So I think it's worth putting some stock in him, but I think where the real value is going to be is, as much as Derek White is going to have opportunities, he's also going to be the focal point tonight for Miami's defense. I think Lonnie Walker and Devin Vassell are the two guys that I'm looking at most, especially with Doug McDermott questionable. So that's kind of right now where we don't know things are. Those are the guys I'm leaning on.
We'll dive deeper. We'll go game by game, really break this thing down. If anybody's watching along, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, wherever you're finding us, you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, whatever it is that we can help you out in terms of your lineup building, placing your bets, give you advice as best we can. We're happy to do it. The top studs available tonight, and looking at them, I don't really feel like there's one guy, like we don't have a Jokic available, obviously, tonight. I don't feel like there's one guy that's positioned to just have this monster night, like no doubt about it. Field's going to be heavy on him. You got to lock him in. This is just chalk that you pay for. I think it's a lot of guys that are sort of interchangeable, whether economically at the top with a Steph Curry or a Karl Anthony Towns are kind of into that next tier of Trae Young, Anthony Davis, Russell Westbrook, Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Pascal Siakam, Jimmy Butler. Like I said, expected to play. Nick Vucevic. You got DeMar DeRozan, Fred VanVleet. That's like all of these guys right now that I know I just like a dozen guys, but all the guys that I just mentioned are projected for in the neighborhood of 40 to 50 fantasy points tonight. If you had to pick one or two that you think though is going to go ham, like there's that one guy that's going to give you a 60 burger tonight or better. Who is it?
I think Anthony Edwards is probably my favorite play overall of the night, and he can save.
Yeah, not even a guy that I mentioned.
No, not even a guy that you mentioned. He's at 8K tonight, and this look. Of course, they are a pace-up team, but you're going up against the Pistons, who don't have Cade Cunningham tonight. They're still trying to figure out their whole deal with Jeremy Grant back in the lineup. So, well, yes, they got one of their better players back, but Sadiq Bey's got to figure out his whole situation. I do think there's some value to be had in that game, and we can talk about that a little bit later. But Anthony Edwards, probably of all the stud type players, he's probably my number one guy. And when you look at what the Pistons do against wings too, I mean, not particularly great against shooting guards either, just in terms of sheer DK fantasy points on the season. Whether you're looking at small forwards or you're looking at the shooting guard position, which Edwards kind of is the swingman between the two, they don't do well against those types of players. So I think he's in a real good spot to go off. I'm kind of looking at Chris Paul tonight too, because you have Ayton back in the mix, and Paul's assist numbers have been huge. And when we talk about prop bets, if we get to any of those, that's one that I've been interested in too. But DeMar DeRozan is another guy too who I'm interested in, because anytime you got a star going up against his former team, whether or not things ended well or poorly, good, bad blood, whatever, I'm interested in that type of situation. And if Zach LaVine, especially if he's not playing, I like DeMar DeRozan a lot more in that situation. I still think he's a guy who's worth getting exposure to. I'm more interested in him on the DK Sportsbook side of things. If LaVine doesn't play, if LaVine does play, but if LaVine doesn't play, then DeRozan's definitely, he skyrockets up my charts for tonight.
Well, and spoiler alert, if you haven't read it, over on the DK Nation website, Nick here wrote about both DeRozan and Paul as really good best bet options. We'll get into that a little bit later on the sportsbook side. Let's go game by game, though. Let's take a look at this thing. We'll go immediately back to, first game of the night, 7:00, but also one that you were just talking about. That's Minnesota, winners of 2 in a row against the Pistons in Detroit, losers of 7 of 10. It's one of those games where we expect a lot of points tonight. 230 is the over-under at last check for Minnesota. Some game time decisions. Patrick Beverley is obviously a key one. D'Angelo Russell as well. You could look on the other side for Detroit. Cade Cunningham has not yet, to the best of my knowledge, been ruled out, looking like he's still a game time decision, as is Josh Jackson. For Minnesota first, though, if you're picking out one guy in particular on that side, I know Anthony Edwards is one that you're really high on. So if I guess I'll ask you for a guy outside of him that you really like, if you were to have a couple guys in your lineup from this game. For me, if he plays, it's without a doubt Patrick Beverley. Is there someone, whether it's him or someone else, that stands out to you?
I think Beverly's a fair play if D'Lo doesn't go tonight. I think that's the other big question mark. You were talking about that before, but I think Beverly does become a better play. I think everybody's pretty high on Karl Anthony Towns tonight as well, rightfully so. And look, of course, we're talking about two of the highest priced guys on the slate with Anthony Edwards. Kind of in that second tier of high priced guys, and Cat is all the way up there for centers tonight at 10K. So I think getting some exposure to those two guys, you maybe can't put them both in your lineups. Maybe you can maneuver some things around, because now we're getting some news over with the Spurs. It looks like Thad Young is going to be starting tonight, not Eubanks. So that's a whole nother thing. You might even, I haven't checked those prices, but you might have room for more savings. But when I'm looking at the Timberwolves, I mean, those are really the two guys that jump out to me for tonight. I think Beverly is a great call though, too. That is another guy from value. I mean, 4.8K. If D'Lo's not playing, then I like him. Otherwise, I'm not necessarily as interested in messing around with him. But yeah, Anthony Edwards is really the only guy who I'm like, I want to get as much exposure to him tonight as I possibly can on that side of it. As for Detroit, it's another story.
So for Detroit, knowing again that Cade Cunningham is a question mark right now, and if he plays, maybe this alters things a little bit. But as of right now, like Trey Lyles, Isaiah Stewart, those are the two guys, if anyone, for Detroit. And really, I don't love Detroit tonight in general, but if anyone, it's those two guys.
Yeah, 100%. And Isaiah Stewart is actually the guy who I'm a little more bullish on. He's at 4.7K tonight. And I kind of talked about this a little bit before. Like, trying to figure out what's going on with the wing situation with the Pistons is a tough thing to kind of deal with right now, especially from a DFS perspective. Sadiq Bey has been a good option the past month with Jeremy Grant out. Even if Cade Cunningham doesn't play tonight, I still don't trust that he's necessarily going to get those touches. I don't know at guard if who's going to see that same workload to Jeremy Grant. What are we getting out of this guy? His points prop actually have something I was thinking about checking, but that's a whole nother story. Isaiah Stewart has been doing well. And in the first game that Jeremy Grant was back, he still performed well in terms of at least returning value. And that's 5K. That's all I'm really hoping for right now from him. I'm sorry, 4.7K. So he's, as long as we're getting value out of him, and this is the team too. I know I was talking about Cat, right? And all right, this is a good spot for him. Isaiah Stewart, centers, the Timberwolves don't do particularly well against the opposing centers too. So this is a good spot for him to at least return value.
So this next game here, and that's we're going to probably spend a little bit on this one. That's the Heat and the Spurs. We'll save San Antonio for just a second. We'll start with Miami. Again, Jimmy Butler expected to play here in this one for the struggling Heat. PJ Tucker game time decision. We know guys like Caleb Martin, Markieff Morris, they're not playing here in this one tonight. For Miami, it's Duncan Robinson is a good value, sub 4K guy. He's 3,800 projected to be in a good spot. Maybe he gets you 20 points, hits that, 5X value. But beyond that, I don't love Tyler Hero tonight at basic, pretty close to double the price. I'm not big on Bam for, I agree. He could go out there and have a stellar game defensively, but I don't think it's going to be a great fantasy night for him. And Jimmy Butler, yeah, I mean, we know what he's capable of, but obviously, the fact that he's sort of got that questionable tag right now is just not a guy that I feel like locking in, knowing that even if he does play and he's expected to play, he's obviously not 100%.
Yeah, I don't feel particularly great about Butler tonight if he goes either. But if Butler doesn't go, I do feel a lot better about Bam with the idea that Kyle Lowry is going to be in this game. I think he sets him up a lot better. As much as there's still, Lowry, I think Lowry's also a guy who, if you want to get a little exposure to tonight, if Butler's not playing, I'm okay with that. But I don't love him as an option tonight. I think Bam, if you're looking at their better players, he's the only guy I would go with. But again, it's only, I'm pretty much on the same page with this one, Adam. If Butler is not going, if he is playing, then I don't really like the Heat all that much and from a DFS side. But if Butler does not play, then I do like Bam in this one tonight. But yeah, Hero's another one too. It's like, well, he's been struggling. I was thinking about him at first. It's like, I just, what's he at 6K tonight or just a little bit over that? It wasn't enough for me to like, this could be the steal of the night. And I know the Spurs are, limping in terms of numbers and everything like that, but there's a guy who's going to go off. I just can't put my finger on this one at this stage.
All right, so let's look at the Spurs. The Spurs are just they're fascinating tonight. Absolutely fascinating here. You've got, let me see here. Derek White, Devin Vassell, Lonnie Walker, Keldon Johnson, Drew Eubanks. You've got Trey Jones, Josh Primo, Juancho Hernan-Gomez, who I just learned today is evidently in an Adam Sandler Netflix movie. Thaddeus Young and a couple other guys. It's true. It's some basketball movie, obviously, but he's like a superstar or something. This is the land in which Juancho Hernan-Gomez can be a superstar in movies. Playing basketball. I mean, those are your guys. Like, there aren't a lot of guys even available, obviously. Key guys, hardly none for San Antonio tonight. The Spurs expected starters, Jones, White, Vassell, Johnson, Young, coming up here tonight. And I'm looking at some of these projected totals, projected ownership. I mean, easily, you've got the top four guys in terms of projected ownership are Spurs. Young is going to be in ballpark half the lineups tonight. Yeah. Vassell, Jones, White, all in the vicinity of about a third of lineups. Okay. So there's not going to be a ton of differentiation. All these guys, all of them are projected to be in great spots tonight. I just wonder, are you willing to go all in? You know what I mean? Like, you've got 8 spots to roster in your DraftKings lineup. Can you justify in good conscience, in the interest of paying up at other spots and really having a ton of money left over to do so, getting like 5 cheaper Spurs guys in there, just looking at it and saying, well, who the heck else is going to produce points tonight, and just hope they don't get blown out of the water?
look, Lonnie Walker's had some games this season. He's gone off a few times. Like I'm not talking like, Jimmy Butler who just brought up where he would, go off like ADK fantasy points, but he's had some nights. This is a guy who I would be interested in rostering, and I would consider possibly Devin Vassell as well. I know we haven't gotten an update on McDermott yet, although we did get an update on that Pistons game. It looks like Cade Cunningham is not playing, and D'Angelo Russell also is out for the Timberwolves. So Beverly looking like a better play tonight. But when it comes to this one, I wouldn't be comfortable rostering more than 2 Spurs in this one. And I think you got a ton of value.
More than 2?
Yeah, more than 2.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of other options. We got plenty more to get to, of course.
I know.
That
in and of itself just feels like a huge differentiation play or contrarian play to only go with, no more than 2 Spurs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, but like, I think that I don't trust. Look, Derek White's going to get some opportunities, but I don't trust that he's going to get challenged throughout the course of the night. This is a difficult situation where he's got to take over and be the guy. I'm not saying he can't do it in some spots. We've seen him have some good games this season, but I think Lonnie Walker and Devin Vassell are the 2 guys. When I was looking at the usage ratings, those are the 2 guys who kind of see more of an impact. And I wasn't when DeJounte Murray and Jakob Poeltl aren't playing. I didn't look at it with McDermott, but I know when he's been off the floor, those 2 guys have also gotten more opportunities on the offensive end. So those are the only guys that I want to roll with, especially with the news we got about Thad Young too. It's like, okay, so he's going to start, but we didn't think he was necessarily going to get a whole lot of run. It's like we were thinking it's Eubanks chalk night out of nowhere, but like now he's not starting. So like that one's a tough one to kind of make that call on. So I feel like with those 2, those are guys I know, or at least I feel confident that they're going to return value.
I think you're going to see wild ownership out of Thaddeus Young tonight at the minimum 3K now that we know that he's starting. Like insane ownership. Like I said, well over half a lineup. So like he's going to be, especially in smaller GPPs or larger cash games or whatever, like he's going to be the Isaiah Jackson, whatever his name is from Indiana that we just saw, who unfortunately went down last night, like 3 seconds into the game.
Unreal.
And everybody's lineup. But like, that's the type of ownership we're going to see tonight for Thaddeus Young. People are just going to look at it and say, well, there's no Eubanks there, starting. There's no Poeltl. There's no what Landale, that the rookie, like he's not out there. He's out, with the concussion or whatever he's dealing with. This is going to be, it's like the free square. Everybody's going to have this guy tonight.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. I mean, and I actually didn't even check where Thad Young's price is, but
3K,
yeah, so 3K,
he's $3,000.
Yeah, and look, to not use them completely if you're running out multiple lineups would probably be irresponsible. But I'm saying if you're trying to just rock with one lineup tonight, you're only just doing one. You're just going in the main contest. What's the main contest tonight? The 350K fadeaway. If you're just rolling with one lineup, then personally, I would not be going with more than 2 Spurs. And those are the 2 guys that I would be going with because you're going to get a ton of savings between those 2. And I think you have to roster at least 1 Spurs player tonight. But I just think that as much as there is room to make up for stuff, you're going up against a Heat team that, as much as they have struggled, if Jimmy Butler's out there and you don't have your top guy and then your top big man, things can go sideways. And we've seen some weird games this year. I'm not saying there's not value to be had. I do think you got to get Spurs, but just I'm not ready to go all in like you are.
Ifusi in the chat. Anybody has any questions, get them out. We got a few games left to get to here in about 15 minutes to work with too. So the Suns, the NBA leaders, winners of 11 in a row, by the way, the only team in the NBA that doesn't have double-digit losses, 41-9, just incredible. And a Hawks team that's been hot in its own right, winners of 7 out of 10. Coming into this one again, another sizable over/under 226.5 at last look. You got for Phoenix, DeAndre Ayton, Jay Crowder. They are both game time decisions. There's no Frank Kaminsky. There's no Cameron Payne. So you can look at this, and I know you mentioned Chris Paul earlier. He's in a good spot. Devin Booker is in a good spot. They're both projected for right around 40, 45 points tonight. Crowder, if he plays, is certainly a solid pay down option at $4,200. Is Paul someone that you like enough? I know you like him from a betting perspective and prop bets. Is he someone you like DFS wise?
Yeah, because the thing is with him right now, I mean, he's been playing at another level of late where he's just, whether it's in terms of distribution or scoring. I mean, obviously he's getting a crazy amount of assists and he's usually like right around 20 points, but like, I'm going to take that all day. If we're getting, what is it? It's like, 14 assists, 19 assists, 14 assists. I know he had that one hiccup, but over his last, it's 4 or 5 games, he's been 13 plus. And the over under on his assist total last I checked was 12.5. So I'm loving the over on that one. And even if Ayton doesn't play, he's still hitting that number without Ayton. So in this spot, if Ayton plays, which he was probable, I believe, coming into today. So that's not ideal seeing him now move to a game time decision. But still, so if he's out there, yeah, Paul is in a good spot right now. And the big difference is if Trae Young, it does or does not play. And he's still questionable, right? Still a game time decision.
Correct.
Yeah. So if Trae Young doesn't play, then I love Chris Paul. I'm sorry. If Trae Young does play, I love Chris Paul tonight because Trae Young is so bad on the defensive end. That's only going to help Chris Paul. If he doesn't play, I still like the bet, the prop bet on his assists. I still think that he's a guy who he's worth getting exposure to, but I don't love him like I do if Trae Young's also in the lineup, going blow for blow and really bringing nothing on the defensive end.
So Trae Young, who you mentioned, is questionable, as is his teammate DeAndre Hunter. There's no Lou Williams tonight. Looking at Atlanta, there's again, like this. If Young is ruled out, obviously in the next hour or so, everything changes in terms of how I look at this team. It has to. All of a sudden, like Bogdanovich becomes, significantly more appealing, and guys like that, even like Delon Wright could become more appealing, obviously. But if I'm looking at it right now, Danilo Gallinari's in a decent spot for a cheaper guy. You could look at Kevin Huerter again. I don't think I want to, it's pay up relatively, but I don't think I want to pay up for John Collins or Clint Capella, quite frankly. It's not a spot that I love for Atlanta right now if we're projecting Trae Young in.
So if Trae Young is in, I'm with you. I don't really have a whole heck of a lot of interest there. But if Trae Young doesn't play, and I know that the Hawks tweeted out an image of come see Trae play or something like that. So I don't know if that necessarily means anything about his status for tonight. But if Trae doesn't play, you're right. Bogdanovich is a guy who's worth getting exposure to at 4.5K. But a guy who I actually like a little bit more is DeAndre Hunter. A little bit savings, not really a whole heck of a lot. I think it's only $100 DK dollars. But in the situations without Reddish, who's obviously gone, and without Trae Young this season, small sample size for Hunter, but he's got the highest usage rate on the team. He averages second most field goals per minute. And then his DK fantasy points, 0.8 DK fantasy points per minute. So to me, returning value on that price, you're going to have to get some guys in this range. That's a guy who, if Trae Young doesn't play, he should be a popular. I don't know if he will be a popular play, but he should be, because I think he's in a good spot tonight going up against the Suns.
Producer Eamon saying, hey guys, you got 10 minutes left in the show and you're only halfway through the plates. Let's hurry the heck up. So the Bulls, the East leaders, winners of a couple in a row, 32 wins. They're in Toronto against a Raptors team that's won their last 3. You've got a question mark, obviously, in Zach LaVine. He's a game time decision. Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, Patrick Williams. We know those guys won't be out there. For Toronto, no key guys are missing for what that team looks like. So if we are assuming Zach LaVine in, there's nobody for Chicago I love. If he doesn't obviously end up playing, that's going to certainly open some things up. But, a guy like,
Javonte Green's the guy
I like a lot. Javonte Green for sure is a value guy, $3,700.
Yeah, and even if LaVine plays, I still like Javonte Green at 3.7K, because as much as there's a ceiling. If Zach LaVine's playing, there's no doubt about it. But he's been pretty good in the first 2 games since he's been dealing with LaVine back in the lineup, because of course he was out for a bit, LaVine was out for a bit, or I guess his last 2 games, because they've been around for the past 4 games together. But I do like Javonte Green in this spot, especially though if LaVine is out. But the guy who gets the biggest bump tonight, if LaVine is it kind of goes without saying, but DeMar DeRozan gets a huge bump. And right now, I got hit at his prop on DK Sportsbook at 30.5 points plus assists. The over on that one. Love that one tonight, regardless of whether or not LaVine plays. I do think that the ceiling is a little bit tougher to deal with from a DFS side if you go with him. But on the DK Sportsbook, that was probably, I like the Paul one a lot. Obviously, I wouldn't be going and giving that one out there if I didn't like it a lot. But I think DeRozan, if he's in, this one's probably my favorite one tonight, my favorite bet of the night, just with what he's been doing from a distribution standpoint since LaVine came back. So if LaVine's in, then okay, he's bottomed out at 5 assists in the last 4 games they've been on the floor together. He's topped out at 10. I can work with that. And then from a point standpoint, he's bottomed out at 23. So he's gone over that number each time in his last 4 games. If Levine's not in, I mean, he was popping off at like 41, 39 with Levine out. So those are the 2 guys. If you're looking to do a little stack, I think that's a good tandem to go with tonight. Javonte Green and DeMar DeRozan. Only if Levine's out. If Levine's in, I would only roster Javonte Green.
Toronto on the other side, obviously you can't help but talk about Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet. The thing that I kind of hate is when they're both available to play, because, you know, if I were Gary and if I were a Raptors fan, sure, that's great. But if I'm thinking about it from a fantasy perspective, obviously one is significantly better when the other is not out there on the, you know, the regular basis. Somebody has to pick up the usage and the points, the stat volume, all of it. And so I don't love either of these guys tonight, each north of $8,500. If I were to look for anyone on Toronto, I'd pay down, look at Precious. You know, Precious is $3,400 and he's in a great spot.
Yeah, when anytime that you see, as much as Nikola Vucevic is a double machine, anytime you see, you know, bigs going up against the Bulls, you got to think about rostering one of those guys. Precious Achiuwa is actually the guy who I was looking at too. As much as Siakam, look, I get your point. Like, he's at a steeper price, and with VanVleet in the lineup, it's far less appealing. But still, he's an athletic big, creates a tough spot for Vucevic. So he's a guy who, among the value options we're talking about, I could see, you know, if you're running out 10 lineups tonight and you put them in one, I can understand that, but I wouldn't do more than that. But Precious Achiuwa is a guy who's probably one of the better value plays on the night. I still think that, you know, there are some others, obviously now with what's going on with Thaddeus Young, he's an option. Isaiah Stewart is an option as well. But yeah, I think there's some good opportunity for savings tonight all around at the center position. And there's multiple ways you can do it. I mean, you can even roster two of those guys. But yeah, Precious Achiuwa, definitely. Anytime you're looking at a big going up against the Bulls, got to take a flyer on him.
The lousy Kings, who have gone 6-18 away from Sacramento, or in Golden State, in the Bay Area, to take on a Warriors team that's won its last 7. It's probably not going to project well for Sacramento. So you got to be obviously, you know, on blowout alert. Nevertheless, for Sacramento, so De'Aaron Fox, game time decision. Marvin Bagley's not playing. Terrence Davis is not playing. For Golden State, it's more the same. You know, there's no Draymond Green, Andre Iguodala, James Wiseman, Otto Porter, guys like, you know, that we for the most part know are not going to play. Sacramento first. You know, it's for me, it's again, I don't know what to do about Fox. I'm probably not playing him regardless, but you know, RICHAUN Holmes, solid spot at $5K as a pay down guy. Damian Jones, solid spot at $3,200. You know, those are kind of the only ones. Like, I don't think I want Harrison Barnes tonight either.
That's fair on Harrison Barnes, but I mean, okay, so if we're talking about
obviously, like, and this is projecting Fox in. If he doesn't play, again, it changes things.
Yeah, if Fox isn't in, then Tyrese Halliburton is every night you have to consider him. At least I do like him in this spot tonight. But I do think Holmes maybe is a fair play. There's really not a whole heck of a lot in this game, at least on this side of this game, that I like. It's just like, you know, yeah, honestly, Adam, it's just like I was trying to figure out, would Holmes be the guy I want to go with? You know, at $5K, we have some cheaper options at center. Some guys who may be in better spots too. You know, to me, it's Halliburton, or I'm going to go spend that 8.5K somewhere else. If Fox isn't in, if Fox is in, I honestly don't know if I want any part of the Kings tonight.
You know what's hilarious, man, is again, Golden State on the other side, and like Curry, always capable of blowing up, but I don't love him at 10-4. Wiggins, I'm not too enticed by at 67. KLAY Thompson is in a decent spot, obviously at only 6K. But the guy that jumps out, I mean, Moses Moody is I guess one of them as a cheaper guy, but the guy who jumps out to me is Juan Toscano Anderson at $3,400. But it's like, I just feel like I keep rattling off like value center after value center. There's only so much room for these guys.
You're in a kind of mood today. That's all.
Apparently.
Don't fight it. But my guy tonight is, I'm not going with the center in this one. My guy tonight is KLAY Thompson, 100%. And this, for this, is it an intangible reason? And I know we're in the business of, you know, studying the data and what's going on and all that, but I just like we were talking about with DeMar DeRozan, where it's a revenge spot for Klay Thompson. This is a spot to go off against a bad team, and for an injury guy, that's huge. So I fully expect him to take advantage of that. I understand the minutes, right? We're seeing like 26, 27 range right now, but we're still seeing plenty in the way of that volume. He's coming off of a couple bad shooting nights too. Still returned value in one of those games. So I think that you have a safer floor with him to return value at least. But I think this is a good spot for him to go off just because it's the Kings. It's an easy team for him to pick on. And if he's, and now it's an easy way for him to kind of gain his confidence.
All right, let's go to the last game here in the interest of time. The Lakers, the Clippers, again, they're both kind of home. They're both kind of on the road. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Malik Monk, we'll see. Again, the expectation is that Davis will be out there. LeBron will not. We know there's no Kendrick Nunn. For the Clippers, it's Zubats, the game time decision, but everybody else, what to expect from the Clippers at this point. And so looking at this for LA, the Lakers first, I don't really think there's a standout, at the moment. Like even projecting LeBron out, Davis, good spot. Westbrook, good spot. Neither one is in a great spot. Malik Monk, you can make a case for, just to mix in the Clippers as well. I think there are a lot more appealing plays on the Clippers side. The Lakers side, I'm just not interested.
So I mentioned a little bit earlier that, watching the LeBron status and everything with him doubtful for tonight. Carmelo Anthony is the one guy who I'm interested in. And yes, I'm riding off the coattails of his last performance, but at 5K, I don't mind doing that, especially again, at home going up against the Clippers. Because again, the team that I was kind of surprised to see them favored at -3.5 tonight. I like the Lakers in this spot. Normally, I'm not one to back the Lakers. I think against the spread. I think I backed them against the Grizzlies earlier in the season before the Grizzlies really went off, and I was like, oh, that's never going to happen again. And I love the Grizzlies too. So it's like this is just I'm not a big Lakers guy growing up in Boston, so it's just killing me. But tonight, I like them in this spot. And I like Melo too, coming off of that big game. And he's had two 40+ DK fantasy point games in his last three outings. The volume, we're not seeing this crazy uptick, but the volume still there. Is taking a ton of threes, getting some work on the glass. Russ, you mentioned him. I enjoy watching Russell Westbrook, but it's an entertainment value to him, but not a guy who I wouldn't necessarily want on my team in any capacity. So I'm always in the past for DFS. Sure. Yeah. But now, no, absolutely not. It's just, I know he's better with LeBron in there, but it's not going to do it for me. No way.
So for the Clippers, and I know we're on the screen share right now. Let's leave it here so I can show you something. You'll never guess who I like best on the Clippers side. I'm going to type it. I'm going to show it to you. Get ready for this. And my all center build, Isaiah Hartenstein. Like him a lot tonight. Terrence Mann, you can certainly look at. You could look at, again, Zubats, if he's out there, is a good play. Reggie Jackson, obviously. Who do you like best on the Clip side?
I just want to know who we got to talk to in the company about having, on bigger slate nights, like if we have 12 game slates or whatever, where we can have an all center contest, like all centers only or all bigs contest, because I feel like this is totally be your thing with the way things are going tonight.
Yeah, jeez. I'm in on it.
But 3.2K, I mean, I think that's fair. I know Serge Ibaka had a pretty good timeout a couple games ago. I think last game he had a double, 34.75K. 34.75 DK fantasy points. If he's getting that type of work, sure. I think he's going to have a tough load against him tonight. I think Hartenstein, similar price range. This is another one of those lineups where I was like, I'm not loving it necessarily. I'm not really feeling a whole heck of a lot there. I mean, I think people say that about the Clippers most nights with the state of their situation. I think, Kennard is a guy who I've looked at in the past, but where they are right now, the Clippers are probably a team I'm staying away from tonight more so.
So we got to go in a minute, but I mentioned on the DK Nation page, you wrote your NBA picks and betting trends for the DraftKings Sportsbook. We don't have time to dive into all the screen share and everything like that, but just highlight real quick a bet or two that really stand out to you tonight that people should be mindful of about an hour away from lock.
Okay, DeMar DeRozan is my favorite play tonight. It was 30.5 points plus assists as my favorite player prop tonight. Taking the over on that one. If Levine doesn't play, that's only going to help on his point side, and you could maybe justify going at his points now. But I think that's a little bit riskier. I think points plus assists protects you no matter what Levine's status is. So at that number, I think it's a great spot. And then Chris Paul, same kind of deal with DeAndre Ayton questionable, that does, help his points prop. I think it's at 15.5, but I'd still rather go with his assists because we're still seeing that number consistently with Ayton in, with Ayton out over the last like 5-6 games. So those are my favorite ones. If you're looking for a spread play, I believe it or not, I like the Lakers as underdogs, but I also like the Suns tonight too. They were at what, +4 last we checked. Actually, they're still at, I'm sorry, -4. Excuse me, -4. Going up against the Hawks. That number feels wrong to me. And it just on that alone. So I'd say those are my two favorites, but I'd say the Suns over the Lakers if you're just picking one spread.
These shows fly right by, huh?
For real. Yeah.
It's fun. We get to dive deep, look at a lot of different things. Just remember, you'll always have more fun with me than you will in the morning, hanging out with Bukes, really, is what it comes down to. So thanks to Eamon, our producer, Daniel, our technical director, Nick Friar, making his our Slate debut here on a Thursday for the sports edition, even though it was entirely NBA focused. Just means the next time that Nick's hanging out with us, we'll have to dive into some other things as well. We thank you for being with us. The Sweat comes your way 11 a.m. Eastern. That is tomorrow. Of course, the Slate back at you tomorrow night after the 4 o'clock Madden Sim. So in the ballpark of 5:15, you will have Bukes and Matt LaMarca wearing his finest of LaMarcas on a Friday to take him into the weekend. So again, join us for that. Should be a good time, and enjoy the Pro Bowl this weekend. I know there's no meaningful football. We're going to miss it too. Nick, we'll see you later.
See ya.